Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Happy New Year. Welcome in to the LA Football Show. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Big weekend for LA football this weekend as both your Rams and Chargers get the victories. Rams now can control their destiny on the 2 seed and winning the division, and the Chargers control their destiny on making the playoffs with the win over the Raiders. So got a great episode for you today. Cameron DaSilva, the managing editor for the Rams Wire, is going to join me to talk about the Rams game. And Dan Wade, my buddy from Locked On Chargers, going to join me to talk about the Chargers and Broncos game. If you want to go to either games this weekend, Chargers are in Vegas. It's a 4-hour drive from LA. We would love to pack that place with the Bolt fam. I think that'd be awesome. Niners are coming to SoFi. Guys, we got to show out. We got to have a Rams packed house. Ramley needs to show up. Best place to get your tickets is our friends at TickPick. That's tickpick.com/LAFB. With that link, you get no fees on those ticket prices. The price you see is the price you pay. Let's pack both those venues. We got 2 games going 4 hours apart for both our LA teams, and let's be loud, proud, and show out for the Chargers, for the Rams. Obviously, the Rams at home, so we really need to show out for that one. We all know it. We're not going to lie about it. A lot of Niner fans live in LA. It's a fact, unfortunately, for us Rams fans, right? Unfortunate, but it is a fact. A lot of Niner fans live in LA. Let's not let them overtake SoFi. Make sure, Ramley, we show out. Get your tickets, tickpick.com/LAFB. No fees. And we'll all be hanging out, having a great time, watching our Rams seal the number 2 seed in the NFC. Then you got to go through SoFi. The only time we'd have to travel is if we face the Packers in the NFC Championship game and have to go to Lambeau. Who doesn't want playoff games at SoFi? Let's make it happen. So, I apologize ahead of time. I've been battling a cold all weekend, so my voice is a little off today, but we'll make it through. So, I hope you guys all had a fantastic New Year's Eve, fantastic New Year, a great weekend. Really excited about 2022 for this show, for the LA Football Network. Make sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, LAFB Network. You can find us on the Believe Podcast Network as well. So big things coming for us in 2022. Huge things, and I can't wait. Let's go ahead and welcome my good buddy Cam DaSilva on the show and get into this Rams-Ravens game. Hopping back onto the LA Football Show to break down this heart-wrenching, or not really, I guess that's the right word because they came out on top, but a very tough, different emotion game, Rams over Ravens. Cameron DaSilva, he is the managing editor for the Rams Wire. Been on the show before. Welcome back. What's up, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Ryan?
Doing good. Thanks for taking the time to come on. How are the holidays and the new year treating you so far?
It was good. Yeah, holidays were good. Kind of just chill and small family things, but it was good to get a little break.
Yeah, I know. It's always that everything stacks up at the end of the year, so it's like, do you take time off? Do you crunch it all in? Like now, I feel way behind, but it was good to have some time off. And but the NFL doesn't stop. We had games on Christmas Day, games on the day after New Year's, which obviously is the one we're going to talk about here. Rams travel out to Baltimore, escape with a 20-19 victory. Up and down performance, I would say, at least from the offense. I think defensively, which we'll get into, played very well. But what was your overall thoughts just from this win, and how do you feel about this team heading into the playoffs?
Yeah, initially with Stafford throwing that pick six and then throwing the interception on the deep shot, it kind of felt like it was going to be another one of those games where the Rams just don't have it. They're going to lull themselves to sleep and just not play well offensively at all. And really, he turned it around. He was 14 for 14 in the second half. Stafford was. I mean, they moved the ball well offensively in the second half for the most part. Havenstein allowed that one sack that turned into a fumble for Stafford, but they played well in the second half. Defense stepped up, and I think two really pivotal plays in the game came when Jordan Fuller intercepted
Mhm.
Huntley before halftime to get the ball back for the Rams. I mean, especially with some really questionable timeout usage, in my opinion, by McVay to call timeout after a 9-yard run and then
Yeah.
another 5-yard run before halftime. So the Ravens really could have gone into the half up 10-0. Instead, it's 13-7, so a little momentum for the Rams. Um, and then the other play was really a combination of four plays, but that end zone, that red zone stand at the end of the game to hold it to
Mhm.
3 points instead of a touchdown was huge, and that gave the Rams a shot. So not overly confident coming out of this game, even though they did win it. It's hard to beat good teams when you're turning the ball over 3 times a game, and the Rams know they can't do that.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest question mark and one that everyone talks about. So let's get into that a little bit. And with Matthew Stafford, it seems like every week, and I get tired of it, I'm sure you do too, but every week everyone's going to compare Stafford to Goff just because of that's, when you give up as much as the Rams did to get Stafford, I get it. They expect a huge upgrade, which I've talked many times on the show. When you really look at it, it is a big upgrade. I mean, he's now doubled Goff's touchdown output from last year, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it, through 16 games, doubling the amount of touchdowns. But the interceptions have been, come at very inopportune times. Obviously, what is it now? 4 of those have turned into actual pick
Mm-hmm.
sixes, and many others have turned into red zone opportunities and points. Uh, on the surface, and we'll get into it more, but why is this just, and I've said it before, is this just who Matthew Stafford is, and we all have to accept the good with the bad, or is there fundamental things happening right now why he is causing these turnovers at inopportune times, in your opinion?
I was just going to say, with both quarterbacks, you got to take the good with the bad. But
Yeah.
with Stafford, you get more good than you do
Mhm.
with Goff, and I wouldn't say necessarily more bad either. It's really just a matter of him staying within the offense on that deep shot to to Odell Beckham. 3 defenders. You had Van Jefferson wide open underneath on the crosser on third down, which would have picked up a first down. Stafford even said it after game. He's like, "I wish I would have just thrown it to Van underneath and lived to see another down," but he takes a not worthwhile shot down the field to Beckham, who was triple covered. And then on the first pick six, McVay said after the game that somebody ran the wrong route. I think it was Higbee on the inside. So that
Mhm.
kind of threw off a little bit. Stafford was like, "I wish I could just threw it into the turf and live to see another down." So I think that's kind of what it is with him. It's you got to just take you got to take the punches and understand that not everything is going to be a big play, and you don't always have to force things. We've seen him do that a few times where he escapes a sack and tries to do too much and throws a pick. So it's about staying within the offense and not trying to do too much. And this offense and defense, they're both really good enough to win a Super Bowl. It's just he has to understand that his offense is good enough to where if it's an incomplete pass or he throws it away, they're going to live to see another down, and they're probably going to move the ball on either the next play or the next drive, and the defense is going to bail them out. But when you put your defense up against the goal line and you have to make a stop from 5 yards out, it's not going to help your team really. So he's got to just be careful in his own end zone, in his own red area, where you can't take these risky throws and try to fit balls into coverages where it's not a high rate of completion.
Yeah, and we talk about the good with the bad, and it kind of, when you look at try to compare it to like last season with Goff, for instance, one of the big things was like the deep shot. Like everyone was so frustrated they were not taking the deep shot.
Mhm.
Goff didn't trust himself to do it, and now we have a quarterback that does. It just doesn't always work out. So it's kind of like you have to accept that, okay, we're getting what we want. We want those big plays, or there's at least those big play opportunities, and they have worked more often than they haven't, but there's going to be those head scratching ones. I'm not saying it's good that he's doing that, I'm not defending him in that, but just saying like, okay, we saw what we didn't like last year. We're seeing more positive of what we wanted, but then some of that is going to turn into, unfortunately, bad plays. And when you look at the trajectory over Matthew Stafford's career, I mean, 15 interceptions, it's kind of in line where he
Mhm.
usually ends up almost every
Yep.
season, is in that like 11 to 16 range. So it's not anything fundamentally crazy of what he was in Detroit. The thing that's I think frustrating here is he has better weapons. He has a better play caller. He has better, a running game now that they've really committed to Sony Michel. And so you hope that as we get down into this playoff stretch, that those things start to mitigate and he's able to do what he says, kind of like what McVay all did last year, right? Like every press conference
Mhm.
was him saying, I got to be better at this. I got to be better at this. But then he wouldn't be better at that the next week. So it's kind of hopefully that will eventually click come playoff time. And I think it will. And I think the best thing, and I'll get just your take on this in your opinion, the biggest upgrade we've seen is that outside of maybe the Tennessee game and the San Francisco game, which was just a debacle, when he's played bad to start or started slow or had these back-to-back interceptions or stuff like that, he's able to climb out of that and actually perform well down the stretch when it matters most. We saw it against Minnesota last week when he played well in the fourth quarter, and obviously the defense picked him up and the special teams picked him up. We saw it again yesterday when he went 14 for 14, like you said, in the second half and really played dynamic football. When you had to have in that last 2-minute drive, like he had it. He was the guy that was leading the team to victory. Jared Goff, unfortunately, no discredit to him, but he just didn't do that. When things got bad, they stayed bad. And it was that for the rest of the game. So what's your thoughts on that? And what would you say to fans as, you know what, I know these picks are bad, but that alone proves that they can win games in the playoffs when, push comes to shove.
Yeah, I would much rather him throw these interceptions in the first and second quarter than I would in the fourth quarter when you got to have it. And McVay talked about it after the game. He was like, nobody wants to talk about the job that Stafford did in the second half, going 14 for 14, leading the fourth quarter comeback and the game-winning drive. It's about the turnovers. And admittedly, not all of them are on him. The one against, I think, the 49ers was tipped off the hands of Tyler Higbee. And I mean, some of them are his fault, but I take way less issue with the deep shots that are getting picked off than I do with just some of the misreads in the poor throws underneath, like the one to Chuck Clark yesterday, the one to Anthony Barr last week against the Vikings, where he just tries to do too much and doesn't see the defender. I think, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's something like 11 touchdown passes, no picks, number one passer rating in the fourth quarter. So he's playing so well in the fourth quarter. It's just that he's got to get off to better starts and really keep the offense on track. And I think Sony Michel can help with that by getting the ground game going early and kind of taking some pressure off of Stafford and just take what the defense gives you, reset at halftime, see what they're doing. And obviously those adjustments that they're making are working. So just keep the game within reach for really the first half and then go to work in the second.
Yeah, exactly. And I would argue, and this is just my opinion, because even I think of the sack fumble that he had down the stretch going down, and you see everyone, and with reason I get it, like, oh man, you gotta just take the sack there, blah blah. But overall, when you really look at a player and what they bring to your offense, you want a guy trying to make plays, like fighting for every inch. And yeah, it's unfortunate it ended in a fumble, and obviously hindsight, you'll say just take the sack. But if you had a guy that every down just took the sack and didn't try to like make a play, that's frustrating too. So it's like we have to kind of peel the onion back on different layers and see what good we want with what bad we want. And luckily the Rams are a damn good football team on all three phases now, even special teams to an extent, which is crazy to say finally. And so they're able to mitigate some of those mistakes. And Von Miller said after the press conference, or after the game in his press conference, that this team, the way they play through adversity, reminds him of his 2015 Bronco team. And I haven't been shy. I compare this team a lot to the Broncos because it reminds me of that. The difference is even with Matthew Stafford's struggles, he is head and shoulders above Brock Osweiler and even where Peyton Manning was on the last year of his career. This offense is head and shoulders above, CJ Anderson and that total offense that they had in 2015. And the defense probably isn't quite as good as that 2015 Broncos defense, who I think is a top 5 all time. But it's turned into a really, really good defense. So let's shift to that a little bit. Raheem Morris has been a fun conversation all year long with fans. I thought he got way too much hate to begin with anyway, and now I think he's really shown what he can do and how much better this defense is. But what's been your overall take on the defense and Raheem Morris as a whole through?
Yeah, I think at times he's played it a little bit too conservatively with these off coverages on, say, 3rd and 5, and not putting Ramsey on the offense's best receiver on a 3rd down or red zone situation. But I think we've seen over the last month or so, he's kind of adjusting and he's putting Ramsey on, say, Justin Jefferson a little bit more. He's putting them on the top receivers and adjusting from there. You have someone like Dante Deone who's playing well as in that nickel role coming in on sub packages, playing inside in the slot, it should give Morris more confidence to put Ramsey on a good receiver on the outside than it would, say, with David Long on the field. Darius Williams has been a little bit up and down. He needs to play a little bit better, but he bounced back with a good performance yesterday against the Ravens, had a couple of pass breakups. This defense, when you have Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, Greg Gaines, hopefully Sebastian Joseph Day coming back, Jordan Fuller is playing well. As long as you get good play out of guys like Troy Reeder, Taylor Rapp, Ashawn Robinson, it doesn't have to be anything spectacular from those guys. They just can't make these critical mistakes and allow big plays, and they have to wrap up with their tackles and let the superstars make their superstar plays. We saw that with Von Miller with the game-ending sack, essentially. Aaron Donald is all over the place. Jalen Ramsey wasn't necessarily playing his best game, but against a Ravens offense that doesn't throw the ball a ton, he's still taking away receivers and making plays on the ball. So you just got to let those guys do what they do best. And Raheem Morris said that at the beginning of the year. I just don't want to get in their way with Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. So as long as their role players step up and continue to not make critical errors, this defense, I mean, they can carry into a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I've said it a lot, probably to the annoyance of a lot of my listeners, but superstar players make coaches look good. I mean, that's the way this league is yes, there's better coaches than others, of course. I'm not going to deny that, but your superstar players are going to make your coaches look better when they are performing at a superstar level. And when this defense has those guys, like you all mentioned, doing that, then this defense is going to look really good. And if they're underperforming, then everyone's going to go after Raheem Morris and say it's all his fault. When in reality, it's there's some things, like you said, some of the off coverages and stuff. And I don't like seeing, some of the linebackers in coverage when they shouldn't be and stuff like that. But overall, I think this unit has turned into a really good unit. PFF has them graded like first in almost every category, which is insane. And they're top, I think, 7 overall in like yards. So overall, this has been a good unit. And I thought they did a good job alleviating what the Ravens were able to do for the most part. I know it wasn't Lamar Jackson, but Tyler Huntley's shown some good stuff in this short time playing, and he has a very similar skill set to what Lamar Jackson brings. So it's still that same style of offense. I want to ask you before I get you out of here, the whole Jalen Ramsey, Taylor Rapp thing at the beginning of the game, was that just two brothers going at it? Was it more than that in your opinion? Is that concerning, or what was your take on that?
It's not great to see. I mean, McVay said it's like two brothers, and it's just two competitive guys who are passionate about the game. But you could see a play before the whole smack happened in the huddle. Ramsey and Rapp were kind of talking before the snap, and Rapp looked like he was telling Ramsey to line up somewhere. And then after the play was over, Rapp and Ramsey went over to each other and were talking about it more. So there was a clear miscommunication, which you can't really have. And Ramsey is a guy who has said in the past, he kind of communicates with Darius Williams and the other corners to say, hey, I'm going to line up in the slot here and you're going to line up here. And so he likes to play where he likes to play, whether it's on the inside or outside. And maybe that's where the miscommunication was with him and Rapp wanted him lined up somewhere, and Ramsey wanted to cover, say, Marquise Brown. I don't know exactly what happened, obviously, but you never want to see that stuff in the huddle, especially in the first quarter of a game. It makes you wonder if there's more to it or if there's kind of an ongoing disagreement between those guys. But yeah, obviously you hope that's not the case, but that's not something you want to see in the huddle of a first quarter.
Yeah, for my summation, Jalen Ramsey is probably one of the most passionate, heated players in the NFL, period. He's been that, since he came out with his whole quarterback list back in Jacksonville. He plays unapologetic no matter who's his teammate or not. And so I think that's part of it. The only really concerning thing for me is after that happened, it almost seemed like then Rapp was playing a little tentative. Like he just looked a little like tentative in his play and didn't really want to be like lined up. And it was like awkward with them on the sideline. And that's what you want to see in the middle of the game, especially in playoffs, if that were to happen. So I think off the field, they're going to be totally fine. They're brothers, they'll get over it. Brothers fight. You don't like to see that at the beginning of a game or at any time during the game, because there was that awkwardness throughout the game. There seemed like a true communication between them two, which, if they're going up against an Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau, they're not going to win that game. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So hopefully that's get mitigated and can get, figured out and fixed, which I'm sure it will be. So
yeah.
Cam, last thing before I get you out of here, thanks so much again for tuning in or for joining me. Cam DaSilva, managing editor for the Rams Wire, always does great work. Always has, you get that stuff out like when it happens. It is in real time. So you do an awesome job. We'll be previewing it all week. So this is more of a recap show, but I at least want to get your thoughts because I probably won't have you back on before the game. But huge one at SoFi against the Niners. I love it. We're ending the season on Niners week, which is one of my favorite weeks anyway. Rams can win and go to the number 2 seed, win the division, like a lot on the line for them. Do you see this as a game that they do win, or are they going to struggle like usual against this Shanahan-led Niners team?
No, I think they'll find a way to get it done. Whether it's Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo, this is a game they have to win, and I think they will win. As long as they take away Deebo Samuel, I think Raheem Morris will learn from some of the mistakes that he made last time around against this offense, and he'll kind of realize what Kyle Shanahan is trying to do to the defense and match up Deebo with, say, Ramsey or Ramsey on Kittle, and kind of just limit those guys and let other players beat you, whether it's Brandon Ayuk or the running backs, Elijah Mitchell, and the guys that they have. You don't want to let Deebo and Kittle beat you, and I think Raheem's going to adapt and have a better game plan this time around. So I think they will win that one.
Yeah, that's gonna be the big thing because Deebo's torched them in space quite some time now. They've actually done pretty good against Kittle, but Deebo's gone off, so that'll be fun. And we'll talk about it all week. I'm sure you will too. So, my man, thanks for joining me. Happy New Year to you, and we'll obviously be in touch and talk more soon.
Absolutely, thanks. You too, man.
Big thanks to Cam. Hope you guys enjoy the conversation. Got a great one this week. It's Niners week, baby. So we got 2 shows, Wednesday and Friday, where we're going to get all into the preview of that game. I've got some guests planned already to come on the show. It's a big game. Anytime you play the Niners, it's fun. Huge rivalry. I'm going to get some polls going this week. Where do you rank the Rams and Niners rivalry we'll start with NFL and then among sports? I think it's got to be up there, at least especially in recent years. It seems like these teams always seem to be at different peaks throughout their history. Like you had the really good Niners teams, with Joe Montana, and the Rams were kind of down those years with Steve Young, but then you had the really good Rams years. And now both teams are pretty good, back-to-back years with the Rams and the Niners in the Super Bowl. And then, Rams have, I think, overall been a lot better. I've talked a lot about it on the show. Niners have 1 winning season under Kyle Shanahan, happened to be a Super Bowl going season, Super Bowl attending season. They lost in that. And then this year can be their other winning season. But yeah, you know where I stand, but we'll talk about that, get that poll going. So we'll be talking all this week about that. But first, now coming on the show with me, talk about this Chargers Broncos win. 2 big rivalries back to back, Chargers Broncos, and they finished the season against the Raiders. Gonna have Dan Wade jump on with me right now. Talk about this. It was a must-win game, and the Chargers took care of business. Jumping on with me now on the LA Football Show. We've been on it before. He does some work with us at the LA Football Network. He is the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast. Mr. Dan Wade, what's up, my brother? How you doing?
What's up, man? It's a crazy time to cover the Chargers. I will tell you that. I mean, it's been an exciting season. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, whether it's, good or bad, I mean, you've had a little bit of everything this year. But, hey, man, 1 week, all the marbles. You can't ask for more than this.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait. So before we get into it, man, Happy New Year. How was your holidays and time spent with family?
It was good. I mean, I basically judge all of my holidays on how long it takes me to get from San Diego to Orange County, just because I've spent a Thanksgiving going 4 hours one way on that trip. And even with some rain, I think I made it in about an hour and a half this year. So everything was good. I mean, I know all the children of divorced parents out there, plus, having your significant other. The older you get, the harder it becomes making it all the family and Christmas and holiday engagement. So I think I knocked out 4 different family houses and between Christmas Eve and Christmas. So it was a big success for sure.
Good. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm fortunate. I have my family all lives in Colorado, and my wife's family lives here. So it's we're either one or the other. So it makes it easy not having to
you're either making a trip, or you're not.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we always do Christmas in Colorado and every other holiday out here in California. So it makes it a little easier on the traveling for me. But Happy New Year was good. Happy New Year. Crazy we're in 2022. Big things in store, I think, for all of us this year, which we're excited about. But Chargers undefeated so far in 2022. They hosted the Broncos at SoFi in a must-win game. Came out with I would say, I think the scoreboard looks more dominant than the actual game was when you really get into it. 34-13 being the final. But they did control the game, I think, from start to finish pretty much. I mean, they were always in control. Yeah. They were leading it by their tune and what they wanted to do and their rhythm. Before we really get into it, though, Dan, what was just your, I guess, initial takeaways from this must-win?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right as far as like the scoreboard goes, even though the crazy thing is like the Broncos didn't score a touchdown until it was 34-6. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
defensively, I mean, I think they handled it pretty well most of the game, but I mean, it really was changed on a few plays, right? I mean, a couple fourth down plays from the Broncos against the Chargers changes everything. So as much as the
Mhm.
scoreboard, showed a blowout in some ways, like, yeah, there were a lot of points in this game where it could have changed dramatically. But I think that my biggest takeaways from this one are definitely the special teams and the defense, just because, yeah, I mean, you're going up against the unit. It's missing Tim Patrick. It's missing Jerry Jeudy. I mean, obviously the Broncos were decimated with COVID and things like that. But you're talking about two units who are, bottom 5 in the NFL, right? Statistically so far this season. I think they were 30th in Football Outsiders DVOA and special teams, 27th defensively. So, like, and they were giving up more points per game than anyone not named the Jets. So I
Yeah.
think that's where kind of my takeaways came from. I mean, I think you saw a more solid game plan from Brandon Staley in this one defensively, and the energy was better. And I saw what you said about Justin Jones and what an impact that dude has made, right? I mean, going into the game, they were allowing 5.3 yards per carry when he was in there or when he wasn't there, and then 3.6 when he was in there. I mean, that's a
Huge.
monumental, that's a monstrous difference right there. And you saw him make a couple of plays on the goal line where he really showed up. But getting that play from Andre Roberts, though, to have that dude, I mean, we were talking about it last night. I know Dan, from Chargers Unleashed was saying best Chargers return man ever. I mean, I'm not going to go through the stats right now and pull it up, but I was thinking, I mean, at least since Darren Sproles, right, which you're talking at least
Yeah.
10 years ago when you had somebody who could do that. But just to get positive performances from the defense and special teams and to do enough offensively, not turn the ball over, I thought, super solid game for them heading into another must win.
Without having it all in front of us, just off the top of your head, do you think Andre Roberts is the best in-season acquisition that this organization has had in the last decade or so?
In the last decade, I mean, it's easy. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, who are we talking about? I mean, there's not a very long list. I mean, Dustin Hopkins might be like second or third place on
And
that
he
list
was this
already.
year too. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, I mean, this is the best we've seen from the Chargers as far as in-season acquisitions. But, like, it's easy to forget that they had 4 dudes averaging around 16 yards per return,
Yeah.
right? Before they brought in Andre Roberts. They tried everyone they could at that job. Nobody took it,
Mhm.
nobody took it and ran with it. But, I mean, overall, special teams-wise, because it's not even that, like, we got to a point where the Chargers special teams were right before half. There's 14 seconds left, and I want them to make them return it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that's something that scared me to death in years past, and I'm like, what are you doing? Make them return it, run another 6-7 seconds off the clock, and then they're not getting a chance for a 61-yard field goal, right? Hindsight's 2020, but
Yeah.
the kickoff return unit, I mean, the kickoff coverage unit, I think is allowing like 15 yards per return. I mean, yet another nice tackle on punt return as well in this game. So, like, the special teams has come a long ways, and I think it's just even that being 30th in DVOA just shows you how far behind they were going into this hot stretch from them recently. But Andre Roberts, best in-season acquisition for sure that I can remember. I mean, the dude's been crazy. I mean, people forget about a 47-yard return to open the game, right?
Yeah.
Do have 2 47-plus yard returns in the same game. Almost took one back against the Chiefs as well. Dude has been awesome. Like, you can't, and even at his age, it's like he's an automatic re-sign after the season.
Oh yeah. And huge hats off to Darius Swinton, the special teams coach. And I think it shows, I think this shows 2 things, Dan. And it's, one that sometimes, building up a unit that has been so poor for so long takes time. Cause I know first half of the season, the special teams was still not good. And people were already calling for Darius Swinton. What's he doing? Like, he doesn't know what he's doing out there. Yeah. And so A, it takes time. And B, you have to have playmakers and you have to have the right plays, and you can coach as good as you can coach. But if you don't have players making plays, it's still not going to look good on the field. And so it took getting a guy like Andre Roberts to all of a sudden turn things around. Cause it's not like Swinton changed all of a sudden his ideologies in the return game. It's just Andre Roberts was better at it than who they had before. So I think,
he kind of unlocked all that stuff for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Like stuff that he was implementing for this entire season. And then they got the correct guy to go out and do it. And it just shows, I've said it so many times on this show, and I said it in my segment with the Rams with Cameron DaSilva just a minute ago, superstar players make coaches look good. And so when you have the right players in place, you're going to make your coaches look good. And that's finally what's happened on the special teams. And hopefully that can continue down the stretch as we go into a hopeful playoff berth here. Before we get into all that though, so, I mentioned that it was, the scoreboard maybe looked more of a blowout than what the game was. You look at total yards, Denver with 319, the Chargers with 341. Passing yards, Denver actually 1 yard less. Rushing yards was very close. Yards per play, the Broncos had 5.7 to 5.2 for the Chargers. First downs, 18 to 21. But the big one, Dan, for me that I want to get to you and ask you is this Chargers defense has struggled on third down. That's been like their big bugaboo is getting off the field on third down. Well, in yesterday's game, Broncos were 3 for 11 with, really poor efficiency. And so the Chargers defense came up big when they had to on third down. And again, you mentioned the decimated roster, missing 2 of their top 3 receivers, banged up on the offensive line with 3 guys out. But still, you play the game on Sunday, you got to go out and physically outwill the opponent across from you. So what did that show you from this defense as we get prepped for a playoff game in week 18, essentially?
Yeah, I look back one game. I think Chargers fans are going to struggle to feel bad for anyone having their COVID issues with what they faced during the Texans game, but the Texans missed more players. The Chargers had more impact players on the list that week, but the Texans went out and obviously wanted it more in that game. And I think it's huge because this is closer to what we saw at the beginning of the season, which was when the Chargers could get a team to 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 plus. They were the best team in the NFL getting off the field. And that seems like 10 years ago, but that was the beginning of the season where if they could get that going right, if their run fits were working and they could push teams back to these 3rd and long situations, they were going to have something to get Joey Bosa to the passer, right? To not be able to let a quick pass beat them or something like that, which that's the automatic recipe to solving Joey Bosa, right? Is you're just throwing the ball as quickly as possible and you're not giving him a chance off the edge. You feel to be able to do that when you get to a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. So I thought that the energy from this game was obviously much better. The effort tackling, especially with the front 7, was a lot better. The front 7 plus Nazir Adderley, who was a freak in this game, but that was huge. But it's not even just that, right? It's the 1 out of 4 on 4th down for the Broncos too, because those 3rd down conversions don't mean very much if you can't get off the field on 4th down. So I thought that was as big of a takeaway as anything, though, is just making those key plays in those big moments, because that's not something we've seen from the Chargers. The big moment comes, and then the offense for the other team is still staying on the field. So to go 9 of 13 against the Texans to 3 of 11 against the Broncos and 1 out of 4 on 4th down, it's going to pay huge dividends because you see the recipe is there. You see that the schemes are working when they can get things right in their front and in their run fits. And when you can get those situations, you get the ball back to your offense who, this was really the first game where we didn't see like an overwhelmingly good offense, right? But the Chargers still won the game anyways. And I think that is a huge token for this team to carry with them down this final stretch where they're going to need to rely on this defense. It can't all be Justin Herbert. Is he going to have a good game? Sure. But they're going to have those moments from their defense where they can win a game like they did against the Raiders the last time, which that game was not as big of a spread, right, as the 14-point spread would kind of indicate. It ended up being 28-14, but it really changed on a Derwin James interception with the Raiders trying to come back. And they're going to need plays like that because they are an incomplete defense, but if they can force turnovers, if they can get off the field on 3rd down, they have enough players to get by.
Yeah, exactly. And I've talked a few times and about this, forgive me because I cover both teams, but I think it's a good comparison. I think what makes the Rams such a good
thank
team.
You to the Rams, by the way.
Yeah, there you go.
We might not even be having this conversation right now without the Rams pulling off a miracle Sunday morning. So thank you, Rams.
There you go. Exactly. And what makes this Rams team so good, though, and why I've said they're a true Super Bowl contender, is when their quarterback plays bad, which has been a few times this season. Conversely, in the beginning of that Baltimore game, the rest of the team has picked him up and played great and kept him in games. Yeah. What's been struggling with this Chargers team is that they win or lose based on Justin Herbert's performance. If he's a superstar, they win. If he struggles, they lose. Like there's no in between. And so if they can get over that hump where, yesterday, let's be honest. He wasn't phenomenal, 237 yards, didn't have any big interceptions, which was big. But wasn't like a superstar quarterback yesterday, but he did what he had to do, didn't make the big mistakes, and then relied on the rest of the team, the special teams, the defense to really play complementary football. And that's how this team is going to make the playoffs and win the playoffs. But that being said, the offense, I think, did things well when they needed to. Conversely, against we talked about the Broncos' third down efficiency. Chargers were 9 of 15. They were 1-on-1 on 4th down. So what did you think of the game plan this week, knowing how good the Broncos defense is, even with all the guys out? They were missing 7 starters on defense, but still a Vic Fangio defense is a great defense. And the Chargers kind of said, you know what? We're just going to play into our strengths. We're not going to try to force anything. We're not going to force any turnovers, and we're just going to move the ball efficiently, which I thought they did. What was your overall take of the offense?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was fine. Like I said, I mean, I thought the game plan was good to go out there and look the way they did on that first drive. I thought was very key because I thought that getting out to a fast start in this
Mhm.
one was just more important in this game than others. Like, obviously, yeah, you want to go score a touchdown, getting a fast start. It seems so, cliche, but like
Yeah.
they got off in that first game 14-0 down.
Yeah.
Not only does that, not play into your strengths as far as being able to protect Justin Herbert and not have those super obvious passing down situations, but what it does is it lets the Broncos, use their running game and have the game plan that they want to kind of unfold throughout the rest of the game. So I thought that the initial script was great from Joe Lombardi. There's obviously some struggles there, and I think a lot of things that can be cleaned up from the 2-3 and outs that immediately followed it. That's frustrating because, I mean, you're not going to necessarily get that chance to bury every team, and you might need to going forward.
Mhm.
So, like, I thought those empty possessions, especially after the turnover on downs, by the Broncos, where you don't come away with any points from that, right? You get the ball back on the goal line, you go 3 and out, they muff the punt, which ended up being a huge thing. But it's easy to forget that was a 3 and out when a really ugly looking offensive possession where you ran it on 3rd and 2 and got absolutely smoked. So, like,
Yeah.
there's obviously some things that I didn't like as much, but it's hard to always tell who is at fault on all of these things because you want to see more deep passes and stuff, and you finally get it at the end of the game, which works, right? Because that final Mike Williams touchdown is the reason you get that play so wide open is because you're going short, because you're throwing to the sticks on so many third downs leading up to that, right? So when
Yeah.
he does give you the little move and he's going deep and you're like, oh, they're not trying to get 5 yards on 3rd and 3, then it's a bigger surprise, right? So it worked out for him there, but I wish they would attack the middle of the field more with, some more 15 to 20 yard gains. I mean, there is a space open there, especially with the heavy cover 2 defensive looks that Justin Herbert is going to continue to get going forward
Mhm.
as long as he has a giant arm and is going to be trying to make explosive plays. There is that soft middle of the field that other teams have exploited the Chargers by hitting tight ends and things over the middle. I wish they would use that part of the field more. And I thought the Chargers running game was looking okay and then just started taking a bunch of tackles for losses, right? Just started getting blown up. I mean, that goal line, 1st and goal from the 1 yard line, you come away with 3 points out of that. That's a
Mhm.
big disappointment, right? I mean, there's no way around it. It was a good game from the Chargers and everything, but you still have to be critical when they deserve it. And I think that was a moment. You run it on 1st and goal from the 1, you get smoked for a 4-yard loss, and then you end up coming away with 3 points. It worked against the Broncos, right? And a beat up offense
Mhm.
and all those things. But those kind of situations have to improve for the Chargers going forward. But as far as the game plan went, I thought it was fine. I mean, they definitely wanted to use the run. They definitely wanted to, use some movement from Justin Herbert and get the ball out of his hands quickly because I'm not sure how they felt about Trey Pipkins, but shout out to him because he played really well in this game
Yeah.
and
2
nobody
good
saw that
games.
coming. 2 good
Yeah.
games. One of the
Yeah.
biggest surprises I've ever seen, right?
Shout out
From
Frank
the Trey
Smith and the
Pipkins.
offensive line coaches because
100%. Well, and I mean, he looked so much worse in the preseason than we'd even
Mhm.
seen from him before. I think that was the alarming thing. But one of the things I've kind of been thinking about as far as Trey Pipkins go, just a little side note, is like I think especially when you get a new coaching staff, one of the things that they could do though is kind of be like, hey, I know you've learned some things, but like this is a situation where we got to tear everything down and start
Yeah.
from square one. Right. And
Yeah.
so you're seeing him trying to restart his whole technique and everything in the preseason. And he just looks god awful. And then you see him, putting in the extra work throughout the season, staying with those guys who have done an excellent job, by the way, and don't get talked about nearly enough. But
Mhm.
you've seen, what he's kind of turned into. And he's always been a brute, right? He could always move dudes in the running game. It was just always the consistency and pass protection. So those dudes did a great job. And I thought overall, the Chargers offense left a lot to be desired. But when you're going into a game like that, against a good defense, missing a lot of players, but they still played well. I mean, I saw that Broncos defense. They were playing with energy up front. Those tackles for loss, those guys were getting after it. It was not a
Mhm.
cakewalk for the Chargers offense by any means. And you still have Kyle Fuller, right? You still have Pat Surtain II, who's been excellent and made some really good plays on Keenan
Yeah.
Allen. And you still have Justin Simmons back there in that secondary, right? So, like, there's still some playmakers. You still could have turned the ball over. So I thought it was just nice that the Chargers offense didn't implode. And they gave their defense and special teams enough to go win this game by not turning the ball over and setting them up in bad positions.
Yep. They did what they had to do, and sometimes
Yeah.
that's all you need.
And
It
it's a
doesn't have
good
to be
defense.
pretty.
Like, and not every game is equal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, the Chargers are going to play a good defense at some point. You look at the AFC playoffs, you see some really good defenses
Yeah.
in there.
Buffalo. Yeah.
And it's and Justin Herbert's not always going to look good. Yeah, I mean, the Patriots, Buffalo, Kansas City's defense has
Tennessee.
been playing better, but I think that's more of a facade. And then Tennessee, obviously. I mean, the Kansas City defense was looking really good until they played the Chargers and the Bengals. They each
Yeah.
put up a billion points
Good
against them.
quarterbacks. Good quarterbacks.
Yeah,
Help.
exactly.
When you
Going
play
up
Teddy
against them.
Bridgewater, you look pretty good. But when you play Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, to get exposed a little bit.
Yeah, well, and so I think you look at, I mean, Justin Herbert having a 90 QBR after starting 1 of 6 in that game, right? And he ends up going, I think, 21 of 26 after that. So, like, he definitely settled in after a rough start. I actually thought he played pretty well, but there wasn't a lot of big time throws. And I think that's something that was part of the design by Joe Lombardi to get him some good, easy throws. And I thought, like, especially like that screen, or that little swing pass they did on 4th down, like, you saw some creativity where they're opening things up for guys to go make some plays, because the Chargers don't have a lot of yak threats, right? It's Austin Eckler. Second place is Donald Parham, who's on injured reserve right now.
Yeah.
Not much else to write home about. Like, that's pretty much it as far as yards after the catch. It might be Steven Anderson. Might literally be second place on the Chargers right now. Like, even Jalen Guyton with the speed, like, dude takes forever to get from 0 to 60 and doesn't have a lot of shiftiness. Like, it's just a different kind of speed. I think that would be one of the things the Chargers need. That's why I wanted Demetric Felton. You get somebody who can do something with it after the catch.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's surprising Keenan Allen isn't more efficient this year in yards after catch, but I don't know if that's
that
just route
cutback
concept.
Move from Keenan Allen hasn't worked in a long time, man.
Yeah,
Trying to cut back against the grain and get some extra yards. I mean, that move went away. The route running's still there, but the broken tackles part has taken a big hit the last couple of years.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, that is a piece that would certainly help this offense, I think, when you have a guy like, again, comparing to the Rams, Cooper Kupp, who's been top 4 in the league the last 3 years in yards after catch among receivers, first this year by a long mark. You just get it in his hands and he makes plays, and the Chargers haven't seemed to have found that this year.
Yeah, I mean, if they had a Deebo Samuel, tell me this offense wouldn't be unstoppable. You know what I mean? They just don't have, and like everyone wants a Deebo Samuel, obviously, but like, there's still a top 3 offense so far this year without that piece. Imagine, kind of what that would bring to the table.
And fans need to know that's what they are going to get. Like, it will happen, and there will be that player. You can't rebuild and reconstruct an entire roster in one offseason with an entire new coaching staff. So stuff like that will happen. But this year, certainly doing great things, and the offense did what they had to do against the Broncos. Like we said, the whole cover 2 thing with Justin Herbert is an interesting dichotomy. We actually did an article up on it on the LA Football Network just a few days ago, kind of breaking down what he needs to do for that to be his next step. And I thought overall in this game, he did successfully kind of evade that, because he just took what the defense gave him and then was able to, like you said, get that deep shot to seal the game with Mike Williams, which may just be what they do. And there was a article that came out by someone I can't remember when it came out, but it was referring to the Brandon Staley defense, which is the Vic Fangio defense, and how the Packers were able to expose that in the playoffs. And it was, they literally just had you have to be boring until something finally breaks open for you when it matters most. And the Chargers offense yesterday was kind of boring. Well, then the Broncos finally bit, and they hit on it and capitalized and won and put up 34 points on the board.
Yeah, and it's finding more of the balance, right? It's finding able to find more of those shots to Mike Williams, more of those shots over the middle of the field where you can find those bigger gains. But I think that is the one thing that's underestimated about Justin Herbert. Is like, obviously you don't want an Alex Smith quarterback who's going to, take the check down over the deep pass. Because that's the other thing about that Mike Williams touchdown is, like, he had 2 or 3 options open for easy first downs on that play that he could have taken, right? He could have taken the safe play on that one. He decided to take the riskier option and throw Mike Williams open deep. And, perfect, though. Great catch at the same time. And I just think that the one thing that's underrated, though, is his ability to take what the defense gives him, because that's one of the things we've seen frustrate really great quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, the first half of the season, was having trouble only taking those shorter options, right? Even when it was the right play against that coverage, right? Josh Allen, the same thing, right? You have this giant arm. It's a lot easier to try to force things down the field that aren't there than to continually take the right throw over and over again. And even though he may have some issues with the cover 2 and when to kind of expose it and when to throw the ball and take those chances and anticipating those zones opening up in the middle of the field, the one thing he has done is really take care of the football. I saw today that his under pressure turnover worthy plays are at 1% of his throws, which would be tied for the league lead out of everyone under pressure or not, right? So, like, continually underrated, because, like, he has a fair amount of interceptions, but he doesn't have a lot of interceptable balls that were just dropped. Like, he really doesn't. Like, and he has a lot of tip ball interceptions, things like that. But, like, being willing to take those underneath things and play within yourself is something that Justin Herbert has been really, really good at a young age, including being good under pressure, including being super effective when he does decide to turn it loose and go deep. So, like, as much as there are some problems that get magnified and Chargers fans, freak out because they're like, what, Justin Herbert's great. Like, I don't understand how he could not be good at something. At the same time, it's like he is good at a ton of things. And there's a couple little things that he could work on to, unlock even more of that unlimited potential that you see.
Yeah, it's crazy how similar these teams and quarterbacks are in LA. With Matthew Stafford, 38 touchdowns, 15 picks. Justin Herbert, 35 touchdowns, 14 picks. Last thing, I'll get you out here on this. Got to talk about Justin Herbert breaks Phillip Rivers' record, most touchdowns in a season, second year in the league. How many times is this guy going to break this record?
That's the thing. Is like, I mean, he's just. The thing is, I was wondering, is like, how many years are going to be stacked upon Phillip Rivers before you get to the Phillip Rivers 34 touchdown season when things are all said and done with for Justin Herbert? I mean, I thought it was cool they did it in 16 games, right? Obviously, that's what everyone was talking about. Like, if you're going to pass a record like that, you don't want to do it in the 17th game where you get the, no one wants to be that guy. But it's wild to me that Phillip Rivers never threw more than 34 touchdowns. Like, I remember thinking that, like, but I think it is also just really underrating how hard it is to throw 35 touchdowns in the NFL. Like, it's just a number that we've seen from him. And you're like, okay, well, this is a natural progression. He had 31 his rookie season. It makes sense for him to have 35 through 16 in his second year. But it's like, that's not easy to do. Like, look at Trevor Lawrence. I think he has 2 touchdowns in his last 9 games or something like that. So, like, it's really hard, especially in the NFL, when you have these great defenses, especially when you get into the red zone. And Justin Herbert, I think one of the biggest things there is, like, he's created his own windows in the red zone, which is such a tough thing and an important thing for a quarterback to be able to do. Is like, things are going to get mucky down there. Everything's condensed. Everything's shrunk. The defense has way less field to cover. Your big arm isn't as much of a threat when you only have 15 yards to work with from the 5-yard line. So I think that's an underrated part of his game, is like making things happen, playmaking in the red zone. That's why it drives me nuts when they throw wide receiver screens on 3rd and goal. Let the dude throw it into the end zone. I mean, he's been so good at protecting the ball in the red zone, besides one play where Keenan Allen tripped against the Dallas Cowboys and it turns into an interception. Like, let the dude sling it. I mean, the chances are no defenders catching that fastball if Josh Palmer can't catch anyway. So I think that's one of those things, but you can't say enough. And I think it got swept under the rug a little bit, just how crazy it is that this dude passed, Stan Humphries, Dan Fouts, Phillip Rivers in only his second season. It's a different game, right? It's a different game now than it was. But Phillip Rivers played in some pretty high-powered number 1 scoring offenses during his time, and he's never done what Justin Herbert has done this season. So my hats are off, is obviously off to him, just because we're witnessing something special here. And even though, there might be some critical thoughts along the way, like, it's only just because, like, you couldn't even have these thoughts with any normal second-year quarterback. Like, the only reason you can critique him and hold him at such a high level is because he's just played so exceptionally well. And I just continue to be impressed by him. I mean, every week there's something that impresses me from this kid. And, like, 35 touchdowns in year 2, passing Phillip Rivers. You're already number 1 in franchise history for a team that you grew up rooting for. I mean, it's storybook stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Chargers fans obviously have to feel blessed going from Drew Brees to Phillip Rivers to now Justin Herbert, who's going to have a 15-year plus career, hopefully all here in Los Angeles. But good stuff. But, huge game. The Ravens lose, the Dolphins lose. So the Chargers are in the playoff spot, control their destiny. All they got to do is beat Vegas, which we'll get into all week long. But Dan, thanks for jumping on with me. Appreciate all the hard work you do, and be well. We'll talk soon.
All right, Ryan, thanks again, man. I love everything you guys have been together. LA Football Network on the rise. Big things coming in 2022. I can't wait to see it.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Big thanks to Dan. Thanks for joining on the show. Does great work with Locked On Chargers. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, we're going to have big stuff all week, too, with the Chargers and Raiders. Got some guests lined up for that, too. I've got one I'm working on that should be a lot of fun. Get a lot of trash talk going. Because Chargers Raiders, where does that rank among rivalries? We'll get 2 polls going. That's got to be up there too. Not just in the NFL, but all of sports. For a while, it was always like California, right? LA versus San Diego, Oakland versus San Diego, depending where the Raiders were. Now the Chargers are in LA. Raiders are in Vegas. Get the LA versus Vegas going, the vibe. 2 destination cities. Just the franchise in general with a product on the field. Eric Coryell years. Al Davis and John Madden, RIP. Shout out to John Madden for what he did and his legacy that will always live on. So that rivalry runs deep and great. Al Davis coming from the Chargers to the Raiders. And he was with the Chargers organization and then went and founded the Raiders and created what the Raiders are. Great, historic rivalry. And now you capitalize it off with a play-in game. Playoffs start now for the Chargers. Playoffs begin. It always was the case anyway. Week 18 was the first week of the playoffs. No different this year. Win and you're in. This is a play-in game. This is a playoff game, and it will be a playoff atmosphere in Vegas. Would love to see a lot of the Chargers fans make the trip and get out there, overtake the Death Star off the 15. How great would that be? TickPick.com/LAFB. Get your tickets today. No fees. I'm Ryan Dyrud. That's about all my voice can handle. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. This is the LA Football Show. We'll be back on Wednesday with plenty of more guests, plenty more good content. Keep it right here. Appreciate you all. Peace.